Why did you switch from comedy filmmaking to horror?
Well, I wouldn't say that I switched as much as I'm just sort of trying something new at this time. Like I said before, I definitely needed a career. And ever since I was in high school, I've always known that horror is a great way to break in. But my instincts were sort of more pushed towards comedy. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And I think I did it decently well. But now, in sort of an effort to experiment and also, launch a career, I think it was a great, it was just a great, what word am I looking for? Idea to just sort of try a different genre because I could sort of flex my filmmaking muscle, which I wasn't really doing in comedy as much, but with horror, I think there's a lot more room to sort of explore and be creative and inventive and work with lighting and camera angles. And then just from a career perspective, when we release these, I mean, these get a lot more attention than if I were to, release a comedy sketch or even a romantic comedy movie. People really love horror.
You think too, because horror can be more, not just regional, but other people in other countries can pick up more on scares rather than a little nuance here and there of some
Absolutely.
funny thing.
That's a huge part of it. I think someone in Japan who doesn't speak any English can still see a scary monster and have a feeling, whereas they might not watch King of Staten Island and understand the nuances of every joke.
Sure, sure. And there's East Coast humor versus West Coast too. Since
That's
you're
true.
from the East Coast, yeah.
That's true.
There's definitely differences there. What have you learned about making people laugh?
I've always liked making people laugh because it's a a visceral response that sort of gives you as a creator sometimes the validation that you need that you're putting out some good content or good material. It seeing I mean seeing a smile on someone's face makes me smile, so there's no harm there. There's a lot of good stuff about making people laugh.
Do you think sarcasm is a dirty word?
No, I'm incredibly sarcastic, and I don't mean that sarcastically. I'm dead serious.
What have you learned about writing something scary?
I think I've heard a lot of people say this. I do find a lot of similarities between horror and comedy. You kind of have a build up and then a punchline, or a setup and a punchline, or a slow build and then a scare. So they're very similar. And so if there's one thing I've learned about horror is that it's actually very similar to comedy. And you kind of get that same visceral reaction from your audience seeing them jump as you would in comedy seeing them laugh. And it feels good to see that. It's super cool. And we've been releasing these horror shorts on our YouTube channel, and I've seen so many people make reaction videos to watching our horror shorts, and that is a very rewarding and interesting thing to see. Literally just looking into someone's eyes, watching them as they watch your movie. I've never ever experienced that in anything else I've ever made before, but it's super cool.
Which horror protagonist do you most identify with?
That's a tough question. It seems like a lot of protagonists in horror movies have experienced or gone through some really traumatic life experience. So I'm sure I identify, on some level. Obviously, they're exaggerated tenfold in movies. I just saw Doctor Sleep, and I love that one. Ewan McGregor's character was fantastic. I'd have to think about that one a little bit more. It's hard to imagine a protagonist in a horror film that I've really resonated with before. Maybe the Babadook, the lead in the Babadook. That was a really interesting movie because I think everyone has some demon inside of them in some way or another, and I think that's what made that movie so great, is it was just a visual representation of something we all experience on some level. Maybe not, grief to that extent. Some people probably definitely have experienced grief to that extent. A lot of people, even if they haven't, can still understand this sort of demon inside that, is wants to get out, and it's that movie was just such an interesting exploration of that, and sort of how you either censor yourself or push certain things away. And yeah, it was a great movie.
Can you talk more about your process for writing comedy?
Comedy, it's very, very hard to write. And I wouldn't say I have any particular process. I think when writing a screenplay, it's really important, and this is definitely true for just about any genre, but I think in comedy in particular, it's very important that the concept itself starts off in a funny, interesting place. And I think for me, I know Victoria hates this word, but when something is grounded, even if it's sort of a crazy, abstract, supernatural, movie or concept, so long as the characters and the reactions stay grounded, I think that's very important to comedy. So you want to start with a concept that is inherently funny, and then you sort of build characters off of that support the concept and are completely different. And I definitely enjoy writing the dialogue, I think, more so than anything else, because just writing odd, weird, quirky, fast-paced, funny jokes is rewarding. And if it's fun to write because I sometimes find myself laughing while coming up with ideas. Whereas if I'm writing a drama or a horror movie, it's not always as fun. Sometimes it's just, scary, or you kind of have to go dig a little deeper to actually find something worth writing about. Comedy, if it makes you laugh, I think it works. So it's definitely more fun.
Did you watch a lot of Seinfeld when you were a kid?
Absolutely. And Curb Your Enthusiasm. Curb Your Enthusiasm got me through high school and college. And it still does today. And a lot of people even say I'm a lot like Larry David.
Do comedy and horror have the same story beats?
I think they're very similar, for sure. Like I said, before, I do think that horror will sort of have a slow build and then a jump scare, whereas comedy will have a setup and a punchline. When it comes to the actual, overall structure of a full-length screenplay, I think just about every genre should follow generally the same kind of rules. Loose rules can be broken, but in that regard, I don't think there's any difference.
Did you ever try your hand at stand-up comedy, Aaron?
My mom did. I haven't.
Oh.
I do have a Word document with some like stand-up jokes, or I have it in my phone somewhere. But I've never tried stand-up. I don't know if that's something I want to do.
How cool. So would your mom perform at comedy clubs?
I think she's tried it just a couple times. Yeah. I think the first time she did it, she was in her 50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so do you remember, or I guess you're probably too young to go to the club, can you tell me about that? That's fascinating.
Well, I wasn't there. I was out here in LA. But it was like a cafe in Massachusetts, and they had a open mic night, and she went and tried it out. And I was thinking, good for you. That's awesome. I don't know if I would have the confidence to do that. I do think stand-up comedy is one of the most difficult performances any human can do. I think it's nerve-wracking. It's difficult, and if I were to do stand-up, I'd want to be everything: intellectually stimulating, hilarious, lowbrow and highbrow all at the same time. And it would require just as much work, if not more, as writing a screenplay, which is something I'd prefer to spend my time doing anyway.
So just with story beats, there's probably timing and things like that with stand up as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think some of the best stand-up comedians actually have a full structured story. Well, they'll start with something and sort of have this story that weaves in and out all the way through up until the end, which is just one giant callback joke to everything that came before it. And I have a lot of respect for that, and I love stand-up. Every time I see a new stand-up special released on Netflix, I get very excited.
Yeah, and not just the concept of hecklers, but also people in the audience. Like if you watch old Robin Williams footage, people aren't even like challenging him, and he's just, pointing them out. And so he has new material to work off of, even if his set is or was one thing. He's got new things to kind of work off and pull.
Absolutely. I mean, Robin Williams he's genius. I think I've seen some of those videos that you're talking about. I mean, yeah, he's super quick, and you definitely need a thick skin to do that. And you just need to really be able to think on your feet, which I can't, or at least not as well. As evidenced by this interview, I'm not coming up with the answers right away. I definitely am the type of person that I need time to like think about things and give a good answer. I don't want to just come out with it, And so I don't know how I'd respond to hecklers. I wouldn't necessarily have a quip, just that quick.
So again, going back to the competitor or the chip on the shoulder, you'd rather be the how the Michael Jordan documentary, he showed that he needed that,
Right.
Push him and make him great. So you're more the one that's the internal. Again, going back to the two schools.
Yeah, for better or worse. I don't know which outlook is better, yeah, I at least try not to have a chip on my shoulder.
Some chips work.
Some chips definitely do. I mean, you need a certain level of confidence in yourself to just push through. But yeah, I think it's. Like I said before, I'm sort of a paradox. I think a lot of people are a paradox. You need your days where you're like, I'm king of the world, I can do anything, and then you need the days just as much where you question everything, your reality, who am I, and why am I doing this with my life? I think that balance is important, and I think it's dangerous to tip anything in any one extreme direction, but it's a giant pendulum that you just need to constantly balance.
So your mom only did 2 stand-up?
I love that segue.
Okay.
She I think she tried it twice, and she said she got a few laughs at my father's expense, but I think it went pretty well for her first time.